The wind whispered through the quiet street, carrying snowflakes that drifted lazily, settling over cars, sidewalks, and lampposts in a soft gray haze. At the edge of the city, a lonely bus stop stood like a forgotten relic. Julie Adams huddled. There, wrapped in a worn purple scarf that smelled faintly of lavender and dust. Her coat was thin, barely shielding her from the cold that nipped at her fingers, her cheeks, her knees. Her bare hands clutched a small canvas tote, worn at the corners, which held only a sketchbook, a pencil, and a half-eaten sandwich. Her stomach ached from hunger. Her body ached from exhaustion, and her spirit ached from the emptiness of 2 days without a proper meal. She wasn't waiting for a bus anymore. It had come and gone. Now she simply stood, unsure where else to go. Across the street, a little girl played in the snow. Olivia Walker, only 3, wore a pink puffy coat and tiny snow boots. Her mittens were already damp, her cheeks rosy from the cold. She knelt on the frozen ground, shaping a tiny snow family with meticulous care. But her gaze kept straying across the street, lingering on the solitary figure at the bus stop. Something in the woman's eyes made Olivia pause, her tiny fingers gripping a crumbled graham cracker. Careful steps carried Olivia across the snow, crunching softly underfoot. She held out the cracker, her cheeks pressed tight in concentration, and her voice was barely above a whisper. "Are you cold?" Julie looked down, startled. There was the small girl, cheeks red, eyes wide with curiosity and concern. The simplicity of the gesture startled her. "Oh, yes, a little," Julie admitted softly. Olivia's face brightened. "You can have this. It's my last one, but Daddy says we can always get more." Julie crouched slowly, the cold forgotten for a moment as she accepted the tiny gift. Their fingers brushed, warmth spreading in a way that stung more than the winter air. "That's very kind of you." "Thank you," Julie murmured. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Olivia," the little girl replied, tilting her head, studying Julie's face like a tiny, careful artist. "I'm 3. "That's a beautiful name," Julie said, offering a small smile, though her lips trembled. Olivia took a step closer. "You look like the mommy I draw in my pictures." Julie's breath caught. Her heart twisted unexpectedly at the innocence of the statement. "She has yellow hair like you," Olivia continued, "and sad eyes like yours." Julie's smile faltered, a thin line across her lips. Then Olivia leaned closer, her voice dropping. "And you be my mommy?" Julie froze, words caught in her throat. She didn't know what to say. Her heart felt suddenly heavy and impossibly light all at once. A voice called sharply from behind them. "Olivia!" A tall man in a dark coat strode over, eyes serious, and scooped her into his arms. He shot Julie a pointed glance. "I'm just being kind," Julie said quietly, brushing off the moment. "She offered me a cracker." The man's gaze softened ever so slightly, but his tone remained guarded. "Sorry if she bothered you," he muttered. "She didn't. She made my day warmer," Julie said, and the man nodded stiffly, turning to leave. They had only taken a few steps when a sharp sound split the quiet, the soft gasp of a human body hitting the pavement. Julie looked down and felt the world tilt. She collapsed beside the bench, her tote bag spilling its sparse contents, her scarf half slipping from her shoulder. "Dad!" Olivia cried, her small hand pressed against the snow as her father hesitated, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Then he noticed Julie's fingers clutching the scarf, her last link to warmth and safety. "We can't leave her," Olivia whispered urgently into his ear. Something shifted in him. Without another word, he bent and lifted Julie carefully into his arms. She was too light, almost fragile. "We're just helping her until she's okay," he murmured, but deep inside, A part of him already knew it wouldn't end there. Betrayal. First thing Julie noticed was warmth. Not just the heat from the blanket he wrapped around her, but a gentleness in the air, the faint scent of lavender, and a soft hum that seemed to come from the corners of the room. Her eyes blinked open slowly. She was on a couch, her head resting on a soft cushion, covered by a knitted blanket. The room smelled of clean linens and pine, bathed in muted morning light, small arms wrapped around her neck. "Mommy?" a tiny voice whispered, soft and hesitant. Julie turned to see Olivia, asleep yet clinging to her, whispering again through a half-dream. "Please don't go, Mommy." Julie's heart clenched, frozen in place. She couldn't move, afraid that breaking the moment might shatter it completely. Gentle voice interrupted. "She does that sometimes. Talks in her sleep, usually about her mother, though she never met her." James explained from the doorway, holding a steaming mug. Julie's voice was hoarse. I didn't mean to. I just passed out from the cold." James set the mug down and smiled softly. "A doctor stopped by. Said you just need warmth and rest. You can stay until you're better." Julie hesitated. "Kindness like this. It never lasts. I'll leave soon. I don't want to be a burden." James nodded, unshaken. "There's soup in the kitchen. Chicken by Olivia's request." After he left, Julie watched the little girl sleeping beside her, a tiny hand still curled around the scarf she had held so tightly. Julie brushed a strand of hair from Olivia's face, and before she could stop herself, a tear slid down her cheek. Later that day, Olivia burst into the living room with crayons and a folded piece of construction paper. "I made this for you," she beamed. Julie opened the drawing carefully. Inside, a stick figure family stared back. A little girl with curly brown hair, a tall man, and a woman with yellow hair and a purple scarf. Julie's breath caught. "Is this me?" Olivia nodded, proudly. "That's my mommy. She has yellow hair like you, and a purple scarf, so now you're her." Julie's smile trembled, fragile and soft. "You don't have to be sad anymore," Olivia whispered gently. "You can be our happy." That night, after Olivia had been tucked into bed, Julie sat at the small desk in the guest room. She pulled. Her worn sketchbook from the bag turned to a blank page and began to write. Her pen moved like a heartbeat. Someone had looked at her, not as a burden, but as someone worth loving. Someone so small had offered her her last cracker, shared her warmth, and called her mommy in her sleep. She had been given a glimpse of the home she had always dreamed about. How could she not fall in love with a heart like that? A knock at the doctor broke her reverie. James stood there, 2 mugs in hand. "Hot chocolate," he said. "Figured you could use something sweet." Julie took the mug, sitting on the edge of the bed. James leaned against the door frame, silent for a long moment. "You're different?" he asked finally. "Different how?" Julie responded. "Most people, they want something or fake something, but you're just here, and somehow Olivia trusts you more than anyone I've ever seen." Julie looked down at the steam rising from the mug. "I didn't mean to stay. I just didn't know where else to go." James offered a soft, knowing smile. "Maybe this place needed you more than you needed it." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of beginnings, of trust forming quietly, gently, between them. The next evening, they gathered at the table. Julie at one end, James at the other, Olivia nestled in between. The meal was simple: soup, roasted vegetables, warm bread, but it carried warmth deeper than the stove could ever offer. Olivia chattered endlessly about her snow family, about teaching Julie to draw bunnies, about naming her pancake tomorrow. Julie laughed softly as she passed the bread, feeling a strange, tender belonging she hadn't felt in years. James listened quietly, eyes drifting to Julie often. At one point, their gazes met. No words were spoken, but a silent understanding passed between them. Not love, not yet, but safety, trust, a beginning. The aroma of simmering broth filled the room. Julie ladled chicken and vegetable soup into bowls, the recipe of her mother, cooked for the first time in years. Something inside her stirred, a desire to nurture, to care, to belong. Olivia bounced in her seat, voice full of excitement. Is it ready? Is it ready? Careful, it's hot, Julie warned, smiling. James took a spoonful, pausing mid-bite. This tastes too salty? Julie asked, uncertain. No, he said softly. Just familiar. Before anything more could be said, Olivia beamed. Mommy, Julie, soup tastes like hugs. Julie laughed softly, her heart swelling. She noticed James watching her, his gaze no longer sharp, but softened. For the first time in years, she felt seen, and maybe, finally, she belonged. Later that night, with Olivia asleep, James sat in his study. Hesitant, he typed her name into a search bar. Julie Adams. He had never asked about her past. She had never offered it. But something, the drawings, the kindness, the quiet strength, made him want to understand. The first result froze him. An article from 2 years ago, young art student accused of stealing a design from her best friend, denies all accusations. The words were sharp, cutting. Anonymous quotes called her sweet but deceptive. A photo showed Julie clutching a sketchbook, the purple scarf around her neck. Caption, "She's always been good at pretending." James leaned back, heart heavy. He wanted to trust what he had seen with his own eyes, but he also had Olivia to protect. The next morning, the warmth from the night before had vanished. James was distant, his voice clipped, his eyes guarded. Julie felt it instantly. She said little at breakfast. Olivia, sensing the shift, chattered nervously to fill the space. That evening, after Olivia went to sleep, Julie found James in the kitchen. He stood by the sink, arms folded. "I read some things about you," he said. She met his gaze. "It figured you would." Embo said, "You stole someone's work, lied, manipulated people." Julie didn't defend herself. Her voice was quiet. "I know what they said. So, is it true? I won't try to convince you of anything." "You believe what you need to," she replied. "I have a daughter," he said. "I can't risk her safety." "I understand," she whispered. Then she turned and left the room. James watched her go, but said nothing. That night, Julie quietly packed her things, her sketchbook, her pencils, her coat. She paused by the living room, looking at the couch where she'd first awoken, the rug where Olivia had drawn her dreams, the table where, for a moment, she felt like family. She removed her scarf and folded it neatly, placing it on the armrest. On the kitchen table, she left a small note. "Thank you for reminding me what love feels like, even just for a moment." Then she opened the door and stepped out into the cold. The night air cut through her coat, but it was the ache in her chest that hurt most. She did not look back, and inside the purple scarf remained, silent, worn, and heavy with the weight of goodbye. The morning light crept softly through the curtains, casting gentle rays across the living room. James sipped his coffee, absent-mindedly, seated at the kitchen island, Olivia's favorite bowl of cereal untouched on the table in front of him. The silence was different today. Too quiet, too still. From down the hallway, he heard the sound of tiny feet running. "Daddy!" Olivia called out. "Where's Mommy, Julie?" James turned, his heart catching in his throat. "She's not here, sweetheart," he said gently. "She had to go." Olivia's brow furrowed, but she said she would not leave. She looked around the room, frantically, searching behind doors, peeking into the guest room. Then her eyes landed on the purple scarf folded neatly on the couch. She ran to it, clutching it to her chest. "She left this," Olivia whispered, her voice cracking. "She left me." James stood still, his hands curled tightly around his coffee mug. He had not slept well. The look in Julie's eyes when he confronted her still haunted him. Quiet pain, not defense, regret, not guilt. Now, watching Olivia's small figure tremble beneath the weight of confusion and hurt, James felt something twist. Inside him, had he been too quick to judge? Had he pushed away someone who was never trying to hurt them at all? "Daddy," Olivia said again, her eyes wide. "Can we go find her?" James opened his mouth, but before he could answer, his phone buzzed loudly. A video call from work, a client, meeting he could not miss. "I'll be quick," he promised, setting his laptop on. "The counter. Just stay inside, okay?" Olivia nodded slowly, still hugging the scarf. But as James disappeared into his office, and his voice faded behind the closed door, Olivia slipped on her little coat, grabbed her stuffed bear, and quietly opened the front door. She knew where to go. The wind was sharper today, slicing through, her jacket and chilling her cheeks. But Olivia walked fast, her boots crunching over snow andis, her tiny hands clutching the scarf, and the bear tight to her chest. She headed toward the bus stop, the place where she had first met Julie. Maybe Mommy Julie would be waiting there again. But just a block away, her foot caught a patch of ice. She slipped, fell hard on her side, her knee scraping against the pavement. Pain shot through her leg. "Mommy!" she screamed, her voice piercing the still morning air. "Mommy!" She lay there sobbing, unable to stand, her cries echoing in the empty street. Julie was walking through the park nearby, lost in thought, when she heard the sound, a child's scream. It hit her like a jolt of lightning. She dropped her bag and ran, heart pounding in her chest. Turning a corner, she saw the small figure on the ground, the pink jacket, the curls, the little stuffed bear. Olivia. Julie dropped to her knees beside the girl, lifting her into her arms. Olivia was sobbing, her knee bleeding, her hands trembling. Julie pulled off her scarf, wrapping it gently around the child's leg. "It's okay, baby. I'm here. I've got you." Olivia clung to her tightly, burying her face in Julie's coat. "I went to find you. I didn't want you to be gone." Julie's eyes filled with tears. She held the little girl even closer. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to leave you, I promise. I'm here now." James came running minutes later, having found the front door open and panic setting in fast. His heart nearly stopped when he saw Olivia in Julie's arms, but the scene before him quieted that fear. Julie sitting on the cold sidewalk, rocking Olivia gently, whispering soothing words, her scarf tied carefully around Olivia's injured leg. James exhaled, his voice tight with emotion. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I should have listened. I should have trusted you." Julie looked up at him. She didn't speak, just nodded. There was no accusation in her eyes, only sadness and something softer beneath it. Back at the house, James insisted she return, at least until Olivia was better. Julie agreed, though her voice remained quiet, her presence cautious. She cooked dinner that night, but served it with few words. She smiled at Olivia, tended to her gently, but she did not sit long at the table. There was a distance now, not in space, but in spirit. James noticed it, felt it. Julie had returned to the house, but she had not yet returned to them. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm. Julie stayed at the house, tending to Olivia's scraped knee, helping her color and teaching her how to shape dough animals from cookie batter. She moved gently through the home, present, kind, but never fully letting herself belong. In the mornings, she folded laundry James had left in the basket, tidied the living room, and slipped handwritten notes into Olivia's lunchbox. In the evenings, she listened to Olivia's bedtime stories and laughed when the little girl talked about a princess with a purple scarf who rescued lost bears. James noticed everything. He watched Julie kneel beside Olivia with patience, watched her brush flour from her cheeks, and saw how she always stepped aside when he entered a room, as if she didn't want to take up space. He started to miss her, even when she was only a few feet away, but he said nothing. One evening, after Olivia had fallen asleep, James knocked on Julie's door. She opened it surprised. He asked if she'd join him for dinner, just the two of them. After a brief pause, she agreed. Candles flickered in the dining room. The lights were low, the table simple. Roasted vegetables, grilled chicken, a bottle of wine. Neither had planned to drink. At first, they ate in silence. Then James spoke softly. "I used to cook with Claire, my wife." Julie looked up. She liked to cook. "She hated it," he said, smiling, "but she said it made her feel close to me, like we were building something together." Julie nodded, quiet, waiting. "When she died," James continued, "I didn't just lose her. I lost myself, too. Since then, I've just been getting through the days for Olivia, for the routine." Julie's expression softened. "I know that feeling," she said, "of waking up and not knowing who you are anymore." He looked at her, something different in his eyes. "You're not who they said you were. I see it how you are with Olivia. How you don't ask for anything. How you stay even when it would be easier to leave." Julie held his gaze. "I'm not trying to replace her," she said. "And I'm not here because I want to be rescued. I'm just someone who lost everything. I know how it feels to be invisible. I don't want anyone, especially Olivia, to feel that kind of empty." The candle light flickered gently between them. After dinner, James walked her to her room. They stood in the hallway, quiet. Something tender passed between them. Slowly, James reached out, his hand brushing hers. He leaned in slightly, close enough to feel the space thin between them. Julie didn't move at first. Then she stepped back just enough. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm not ready." James didn't speak. He didn't seem hurt, just still. "I remember what it felt like," Julie said quietly. "When the article came out, how people looked at me like I was broken or dangerous, like I didn't belong anywhere." She paused, her voice steady. "Before I can belong here, I need to believe I belong anywhere. I need to stand up again." "By myself," James nodded. "I'll wait," he said gently. Julie smiled faintly and opened the door. Before stepping inside, she turned to him. "Thank you for dinner, for listening." She closed the door softly. Inside, she leaned against it for a moment, her heart still, racing. Outside, James remained in the hallway, staring at the closed door, knowing she was just a few feet away, and yet still so far. But for the first time, he believed the distance wouldn't last, and he was willing to wait. The late afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting a golden glow across the living room. Olivia sat cross-legged on the rug, humming softly as she colored in her sketchbook. Julie sat beside her, gently guiding the little girl's hand as she drew a bunny with a crown. The front door opened. James stepped in with an old friend, Daniel Brooks, a creative director at a major design firm. "Sorry for dropping in," Daniel said, brushing snow from his coat. "But your house smells like cinnamon." Couldn't resist. As they stepped into the living room, Daniel stopped, eyes drawn to the floor around Olivia, where several of Julie's sketches lay scattered. Pencil drawings of fairy tale woods, mothers and daughters, a snow-covered bus stop, and wide-eyed animals holding signs of hope. "Who drew these?" he asked. Julie looked up, surprised. "They're just sketches for Olivia." Daniel crouched down, lifting. "1. This line work. I know this style. It's beautiful." "She drew them," James said quietly. Julie hesitated. "They are nothing. I haven't done anything professional in a long time." You should, Daniel replied. You're exceptional. A few days later, he reached out with an offer, a freelance project under the pseudonym LJ to illustrate a children's book tied to a foster care mental health initiative. No exposure, no pressure, just the work. Julie hesitated, but eventually agreed. The cause moved her. Her illustrations were quiet, heartfelt, and deeply human. One job led to another. Soon, blogs and social media began buzzing about Lid J, a mysterious illustrator whose emotional drawings touched thousands. Julie never sought credit. She just kept drawing. But talent rarely stays hidden. Months later, a journalist stumbled upon her work. Drawn by the emotion in her art, he investigated further. In one drawing, he noticed a girl holding a purple scarf. It reminded him of a long-forgotten image, a photo from a scandal years ago. Julie Adams, accused of stealing a classmate's design. Curious, he followed the thread, tracking down classmates, reviewing projects, even finding an old professor who had once tried to defend her. The truth emerged. Julie hadn't stolen anything. She had been betrayed and silenced. The journalist published a feature titled Julie Adams, the girl they tried to silence. It went viral. The article told the real story. It honored Julie's choice to walk away from bitterness and instead use her art to give quietly to children in need. The world knew her name again, but this time with respect. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. The envelope bore the seal of the Resilience Initiative, a national art campaign for children who had suffered trauma. Inside, an invitation. We would be honored if you would serve as creative director for this year's campaign. Your story and your art embody everything we stand for. Julie stared at the letter in silence, hands trembling. James Satney Arby. You're not obligated, he said softly. I know, she replied, but I think I want to say yes. She didn't tell Olivia face to face. Instead, she packed quietly one early morning. Before leaving, she kissed Olivia's forehead as she slept and placed a letter on her pillow. My dearest Olivia, you taught me how to feel again, how to laugh, how to dream, how to hope. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. I have to go now to help other children like you find their voices. But that doesn't mean I've left you. Every time you draw, smile, or remember how much you are loved, I'll be right there. Love always. Mommy. Julie. Then, with her bag over her shoulder and her heart aching, but full, Julie closed the door behind her. This time, she didn't walk away in shame. She walked away in strength. The living room was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound feel louder than it was. Olivia sat, cross-legged on the floor, flipping through the TV channels while James sorted through a stack of mail nearby. He was half listening to the screen when Olivia suddenly gasped, Daddy, look! James looked up. On the screen was a woman standing beneath a spotlight surrounded by an elegant gallery of artwork. Behind her, a banner read, Resilience. Art that heals. Julie stood at the center, poised, yet gentle, her hands folded together. She was speaking into a microphone, but it was her eyes that struck James first. She smiled as she spoke, her voice calm and clear. But here her eyes looked as though they were still searching for something. Olivia crawled closer to the screen, resting her chin on her knees. She looks happy, she whispered. But her eyes still look for us. James didn't reply. He could not find the words. Instead, he walked to the coat closet, pulled out Olivia's jacket, and knelt beside her. He felt her. Let's go, he said. The gallery buzzed with polite conversation, camera shutters clicking softly as guests walked among the art displays, each piece a testament to healing, loss, and the resilience of the human spirit. Julie stood near the entrance, dressed in a simple, elegant navy mule dress. Her hair was gently curled, and in her hand was a folded speech she had just finished giving. She had smiled throughout. She had thanked the sponsors, the children, the supporters. But now, as she looked at the families surrounding her, the mothers, the fathers, the little ones with tear eyes, she felt an ache she couldn't quite hide. Something was missing, or someone. Then a small voice echoed through the room. "Mommy!" Julie turned sharply, her breath catching. Olivia came running through the crowd, arms wide open, her face lit up with joy and tears. Julie dropped everything and knelt down, wrapping her arms around the little girl, pulling her in tight. "Olivia," she breathed. "My sweet girl." The crowd parted slowly, forming a quiet circle around them. Cameras lowered, conversations stopped. And then Olivia, still clutching a folded piece of paper, looked up at her. "I made something," she whispered. "For you." Julie nodded, unable to speak. Olivia stepped back, walked toward the small platform at the front of the gallery, and climbed up. A staff member quickly adjusted the microphone. The room went still again as Olivia unfolded her paper. She cleared her throat. Home is not walls or floors. It's not windows, locks, or doors. Home is a hug when the world feels scary, warm tea, soft blankets, and someone to carry. Home is where you are not alone. It's the voice that calls you back. Home. So I don't care about house or city. Home is where Mommy is. That's all I see. Julie's hand flew to her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. The room erupted in quiet sniffles, hands clutching hearts. And then James stepped forward. He moved slowly, purposefully, carrying something in his hand, a small velvet box. He stood before Julie, meeting her eyes. "I brought something," he said, voice low and steady. He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring with a tiny heart-shaped stone. It was simple, timeless, a family ring passed down from his mother. "So, this isn't a proposal," he said, a slight smile touching his lips. "It's a promise that you already are and always will be a part of this family." Julie stared at him, stunned. Her lips trembled. She tried to speak, but all she could do was nod. "I never had a home," she whispered. "Not really. Not since I was a little girl." She looked at Olivia, then back at James. "But maybe this is what it feels like. Maybe this is where I belong." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and as the applause broke out, quiet and respectful, Olivia raced back to them, hugging them both, squeezing between them. Julie laughed through her tears, holding them tight. This time she did not feel like she was passing through. She was rooted, seen, wanted. She was home. The smell of vanilla and warm batter drifted through the house as morning sunlight poured through the kitchen window. Outside, a thin layer of frost still clung to the edges of the glass, but inside everything was warm and golden. Julie stood at the stove in her pajama pants and oversized sweater, flipping pancakes with one hand and helping Olivia squeeze maple syrup onto a plate with the other. Wait, Julie laughed. "That's enough syrup to flood the town." Olivia giggled, her cheeks smeared with a dot of flour. "But pancakes love syrup. Do they now?" Juliet eased, handing her a small plate. "Then I guess we'd better not disappoint them." James stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, just watching. His gaze lingered on the two of them, his daughter and the woman who had once been a stranger at a bus stop, now at the very center of his world. He crossed the room in a few quiet steps and wrapped his arms around both of them from behind. Julie looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that says without words, "I'm home." James leaned in, kissed her temple, and whispered, "Thank you for not letting go." Julie turned to him, eyes soft. "Thank you for reaching out." Olivia looked up at them, sandwiching herself between their legs with a pancake in each hand. Family. "Hug," she declared, and the three of them dissolved into laughter. Later that week, James led Julie out to the backyard, covering her eyes with his hands. "No peeking," he warned. "I am remarkably patient," she replied with a smile. "But if you make me walk into a tree, I will sue." He laughed, noted. When he finally removed his hands, Julie gasped. There, nestled at the far end of the garden, was a small studio cottage. The siding was painted a soft gray new with white trim and tall windows that let in the morning light. A stone pathled to the porch where a wooden sign hung neatly above the door. "Julie's future." Her hand flew to her mouth. "You did this for me." James nodded. "You gave us back our future. I thought it was only fair you had a place to shape your own." Inside, the studio was bright and clean. Easels lined the wall, shelves filled with sketchbooks and paint jars, worked, nestled beneath a large window. On one wall, several of her framed illustrations hung proudly, pieces about hope, healing, and motherhood. A small corner displayed prints for sale with a sign that read, 50% of proceeds donated to children's charities. Julie turned in place slowly, taking it all in, here ye's shimmering. "I've never had a space that was just mine." James reached for her hand. "Now you do, and you're free to fill it with whatever future you imagine." Julie didn't answer. She just stood on her toes and kissed him. That evening, the three of them sat curled up in front of the fireplace. Olivia was nestled between them in her footy pajamas, clutching her favorite bear, now with a new little scarf Julie had made from leftover fabric, purple like the one Fiancé left behind. The fire crackled gently, casting flickering shadows on the walls. A cup of cocoa steamed in each of their hands. The air smelled of cinnamon and wood smoke. Olivia leaned her head against Julie's arm and yawned. "Mommy? Daddy?" she mumbled sleepily. "Can we stay like this forever?" Julie looked at James, her eyes soft with joy. She kissed Olivia's forehead and whispered, "We already are, sweetheart. We already are." Outside, the snow had started to fall. Again, but this time it didn't feel cold. It felt like peace. In a house once filled with silence, a new family bloomed, not by blood, but by love, trust, and the courage to heal. Julie found her voice. James opened his heart. And little Olivia reminded them that true homes are built with second chances. If this story moved you, like, comment, and share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories, where every soul deserves a story that stirs it.